Okay, both halves of the mold have been powdered, and I'm preparing them to pour the first casting out of them. I'm simply going to make sure the top is secured down to the bottom part. Okay. And then I'm going to lock the plaster support jacket around like so, and I'm going to hold it down with some large size rubber bands. Alrighty, I'm getting ready to pour the first skull. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this funnel into one of the horn openings, and the other horn opening that's here will act as an air channel to allow the air to escape. What I do when I use a funnel with resin, I spray the inside with this Sinlube 531 release agent. It's a Sinair product. What I like is kind of an aerosol wax, and it gives the inside of the funnel, and I spray down at the tip with it too on the outside. It gives it a nice coating. You let it thoroughly dry, okay? And you can actually peel whatever dried resin is in the fuzzle. You can peel it out. In the fuzzle? Let's try in the funnel, and you can peel that out of the funnel. I'm going to work this in a little bit. Now I've gone ahead, I've mixed up a new batch of bone white, and I've put 100 milliliters of it into this large mixing cup right here. Now I'm going to add 100 milliliters of part A. This is the Smoothcast 305. I'm going to add it in a little bit at a time to make sure I get an equal amount. Okay, now I'm going to wipe the excess off the outside of the cup. Right, there we go. There was 150 milliliters measured out into each cup, and I've poured 100 in for the initial pour. I don't think the 100 is going to completely fill this skull, and I don't want it completely filled immediately because I am going to slosh this around inside and try to make sure that all parts are covered. So I'm going to go ahead and mix this up thoroughly for about a half a minute or so here. I don't really time it, I just mix it. And I'm going to carefully pour into the skull from the cup. I pinch the cup. All right, it's a treated paper cup. I'm going to pinch the cup and make a little pour spout to pour down into the funnel. I want to try and get into the center of the funnel with this. And I want to pour slowly. I'm running it down the side of the funnel. I don't know how well you can see this. Let's see if I can get it on camera, what I'm doing here. I run it down the side of the funnel, like so, and that creates as little air as possible on its way into the mold. Now, I don't know how, we're up to, okay, we're coming up to the other hole here. So let me put this cup aside and pull the funnel out of here. Put the funnel down on a piece of paper towel, and I'm going to slosh this around a little bit in here as much as I possibly can. I want to get all the little details covered. You remember the small details, the zygomatic arch and whatnot on the cat skull. Well, this has got the same thing in here. But I want to try and get it all completely. Yeah, we've got some serious leakage. Okay. It's leaking out the sides and out the back. All right. I want to try and keep any more from leaking, so I don't know how I can keep any more from leaking. I guess if I stop tilting it, the leaking will be less. What I'm going to do is I'm going to let this start to set up and wipe off the excess that did leak out. I'll wipe that off. I can keep an eye on it and see if any... Yeah, she's still leaking. Okay, it's leaking especially from this one spot here. It's leaking on one side only. It's leaking off the right side only, it seems. And it was leaking out the back. So I'm going to try and just block this with this paper towel crammed up on it like so. I'm going to go ahead and top it off with what I have left in here. Alright, now we've come right up to the top of the horn openings, the horn cores that are a part of the mold. And I hope I see this begin to set before I see it dropping anymore. Force this to set. I'm going to do what I normally don't like to do. I'm going to apply some light over the subject here and try and heat this resin up with an artificial source. If I can get it to warm up, maybe I can get it to gel, and once it starts to gel, the leaking will stop. Because the leaking will cause air pockets to form, and that will cause weak spots. I'm glad I decided not to try and rotationally cast this skull. I'm going to go ahead and mix up, or at least prepare another batch for mixing. I'm going to pour in my pre-colored part B into the paper cup. All right, and I'm hoping the heat will start this kicking. And then I'm going to pour in the part A, but I'm not going to mix it yet. I'm just going to let this sit. It really won't start to cure until you combine the two together. I'm seeing a lot of stuff going down through the hole. Let's see if I can get a camera eye view here of what's happening. Show y'all what's happening. It ain't pretty, but see, that's gone down quite a bit. It was filled right up to the top. It's gone down quite a bit. It's leaking out the back here and off to the side, on the right side. Darn. I don't like when stuff like this happens. I cannot say I am pleased at this point, but sometimes you have to have mistakes happen in order to learn what not to do the next time. All right, I think heating the resin has really put a damper on the leaking. So I'm going to go ahead, mix the rest of this up. So basically we had 150 milliliters of part A and 150 milliliters of part B. So we had 300 milliliters total go into this mold, and I don't know how much leaked out. Unfortunately, there's no way to gauge that. I'm going to put this back in the opening here, and I'm going to go ahead and add more resin. Yeah, it has slowed down. It's starting to set in the mold. It's starting to set. I may go ahead and fill through both horn openings at this point. Whoops-a-daisy. Okay. We have overflow. That's what I get for not watching what I was doing. We have an overflow here, which I'm sure you can see, which tells me that whatever's in there is filled. Okay, I went and pulled the casting out of the mold, and you can see what the result of a lot of leakage creates. Okay, we have weak spots here and a lot of details missing. We have weak spots here at the front because, you know, the resin just leaked out. We have some uneven seams at the back. Now, I did figure out it's not so much the mold not lining up. It does line up. It does line up. However, the back was fitting a little loose. So rather than go with rubber bands, now this is not bad for the first pull. Okay, this is not bad for the first pull. I've done a little bit of trimming and whatnot, but this is not bad. It's not what I want, but it's not bad. I want a little more perfection in the final product. So what I've got here now, this thing looks like a dinosaur egg. what I've got here now, these are ceramic mold clamps. These will hold the plaster together really, really tight. There should be no leaking when I pour the next one. And the mold has already been powdered, powder blown out, been reassembled, of course. And now instead of just using rubber bands, which have got, you know, a lot of play and they've got their purpose, but that's how you find these things out. That's how you find these things out. You make a cast, you lose resin, you scratch your head and say, okay, let's use something stronger. Now these hold down really, really tightly around the mold. They're a canvas material, and these are locking buckles, and these things just hold this sucker down tight. Where it leaked out around was, it leaked out from behind here, and when I put the rubber bands around it, I saw there was some play here still. There's no more play here. This puppy, she's a set. So I'll be pouring another one and be doing it the same way. I'm going to reapply the separator to the funnel, which it worked well. The funnel cleaned out beautifully. And I still have some of my color mix resin. I still have some of that made up. There's the bone white. And now I know how much I need for a skull of this size. That's the other thing that you learn. You learn the amount you need. But like I say, it's not the poorest, you know, it's not the poorest casting. It's not the best, it's not the worst. This is typical for a lot of first pours. You see there's a lot of air pockets that formed. And a lot of that is from the resin leaking out from the bottom and drawing it away from all these other contact points. As all these other contact points are higher where we've got missing resin. These are higher than the level of the seam. The seam is down along here, okay? And that's where it leaked out. It leaked out from the bottom. And of course, this being the thinnest part of the mold, this was affected the most. We had the most resin loss here. Now, this can be sculpted into place. I still want to try and get a better casting, so I'm going to go for it again. So, it's take two on making a casting, but we'll get a good one, I'm sure. I know what happened. I know it came apart, and it's going to be held back. It's going to be held together a lot tighter than the first time. I've been doing one more thing. I had one more idea. Besides the straps being so tight onto the plaster, I'm taking the really, really super warmed clay and I'm sealing the edges where the two mold halves, with upper and lower mold parts meet. Now, I didn't get any leakage out of the front of the mold, which is what I'm covering here. But because we've got it squeezed so tight at the back, and it's squeezed tight here at the front too, I just want to make sure that this thing doesn't start to try and overcompensate itself and try to leach out elsewhere. Now, I thought about going with hot glue. The problem with that on the plaster mold, that could become a problem, and it could be reach a point where I could not get the mold apart, and I don't want that. The clay will let go of itself. Right? It will let go of itself. And I'm putting it, it's late at night now, and I'm putting this really super warmed clay on at night. And tomorrow, when I pour the second casting, this will have cooled really substantially. I mean, right now, it's really, really soft and malleable. I mean, it's ridiculously soft, okay? So when I put it here on the mold, it's really going to blend into the plaster, and hopefully, besides the clamps holding her tight, hopefully this will help create a barrier dam of some kind to help keep leakage to minimal or zero. That would be nice. It's like I say, the only reason the casting I pulled out of here had so many little faults and so many thin areas was because of the leakage. Like I said, leaks out, and that causes air to displace the resin and creates all the holes and cavities that we saw in that casting. Now, yeah, I did not go under the belts. I did not want to take them off. They're on there tight. In fact, I retightened the one here at the rear. That's really been tightened up, this one here. But I think, you know, because these are so tight, what I will do is I'll simply just take this warm clay and just kind of mash it into where the strap meets the plaster mold. I think this will help. I also think that strapping this down tight, much tighter than you could get with a rubber band, will go a long way here. I mean, right now it's after midnight. Yeah, it's 12:30 in the morning, so I do this a lot. I get something in my head, I'm like, I gotta try this. And I just come down out into the shop and I try this, and I don't lay down until I know I can lay down with a clear head and say, okay, I did this idea, and I think this will help even more. So I'm just going to go ahead and keep on keeping on. And you see how the clay spreads? I mean, it's like it becomes part of the plaster mold. This ought to really help. This ought to really, really help. This ought to be a super seal. And sometime tomorrow I'll pour another casting, and I'm feeling more confident. Once you pour one that has problems and you figure out those problems and you understand those problems, pouring the next one tends to make you more confident in the task at hand. And I am right now. I know what I did wrong. I know that this was not tightened down tight enough. The rubber bands were not tight enough. I also know that there was a little bit of moisture in here, which was caused the resin to kind of almost foam up. And that's a reaction that resin has when there's moisture about. So there might have been some excess moisture on the mold. Now the first casting got rid of all that. You know, it got rid of all that. So hopefully the second casting won't have that problem. Plus it's been powdered again, and it's going to sit overnight, so it's going to be good. The Sinlube 531 release agent has been sprayed into the funnel, and this will be sitting here waiting on it tomorrow. Good morning, everybody. Okay, we've got part A and part B of the Smoothcast 305 pre-measured out. It's 100 milliliters, which works out to about close to 3.5 ounces of resin per side. Now, the first one here, of course, is the pre-colored, the bone white that I used yesterday, using another large mixing cup. And I'm going to go ahead, pour this out away from my ink markings. And I'll just simply turn this so that it runs back down into the inside. Now I'll do the same thing. The next one with part A. Put this in. Let it run all the way. Turn the cup so it runs back inside. Wunderbar, wunderbar, ba ba ba, wunderbar. All right. We've got the funnel again prepared with the Sinlube 531 release agent. It was sprayed in again last night. I'm going to put the mold in the center here. Insert the funnel into the top of the horn opening, or horn core opening actually, and I'm going to mix this up. I'm going to use a little bit. I want to push it around, maybe even a little less than half of what I've had in the cup here. I want to rotate the mold slightly to make sure it gets into every possible area within the mold that I want covered. Let me get a piece of paper towel ready, just so I can put the funnel down on it. All right, there we go. Okie dokie. Mix this up. Pour it in. Again, I run it down the side of the funnel. I know you can't see this, but I can. And I've got to be able to see what the heck it is I'm doing. I'm going to pull the funnel out. I'm just going to move this around in the mold and cover all areas that I possibly can. I want to rotate this until I can see it coming up the horn opening. I don't know if the camera picked that up. All right, now I'm going to lay this back down, and we have no seepage like we did on the first pour. That's because these ceramic mold belts are holding in place real well. I'm going to pour this carefully, and I'm going to keep an eye on the opposite horn opening. When I see this coming up, I'll know I have enough resin inside. Here it comes to the top. All right, let's stop right there. Pull the funnel out. And I can show what I have here. We have no leakage, no seepage. And I hope you can see we've come right up to the top of the horn openings. Reposition the camera here so we can see this. All right, there we are. There we are. Now, I'm going to take a pipette and I'm going to top this off. This is all that's left in the cup, by the way. So it seems the 3.5 ounce of each, or 100 milliliters of each side, part A and part B, did the trick. And I'm going to simply top this off. And you only have to put it into one side. You don't have to put it into both. Now, I've got some superheated clay. The light has been on, the 60-watt bulb has been on over the clay all night. So what I'm going to do now, I'm simply going to take this really super warmed clay and I'm going to cap this one horn opening here. In case, as the resin begins to kick, it begins to rise again as it did the first time. I figured there was a little bit of moisture in the mold and the resin began to foam a bit. And that can sometimes happen with your first mold, regardless. Now I'm going to cover the other opening of the horn core on the opposite side. I need a little more clay than this. Just want to take this is super warmed clay this morning. Keep the light on it overnight. It's only a 60-watt bulb in the lamp, so. And I'm going to push that into the depression a little bit of the horn opening. I'm keeping my finger on this other one so that the pressure I'm applying on this side doesn't push the resin out on the opposite horn opening. All right. Now, that should do it. I'm looking around here and I have no leakage anywhere. There is no leakage around the mold at any point. We're dry all the way around, thankfully. Like I say, each pour, especially after the first one, if the first one goes off without a hitch, just try to repeat what you did the first time. If, however, you have resin seeping out of your mold, try to figure out why. You know, there are reasons why it was leaking out. One of the reasons was for some reason I insisted on using rubber bands. I thought that would be enough pressure to hold the mold closed. Obviously, as we found out, it was not. Still pulled a decent casting. I'm hopeful that this casting will be even better than the first, because the resin was able to reach all parts of the mold as I moved it around. And with that, put a little more warm clay right here. Right here. There we go. All right. And if it's going to foam, it may ooze out a little bit, but it won't run down like it did yesterday. But, you know, once I determined that, okay, the plaster needed to be held down tighter, I took care of that. And then I had the brilliant idea in the middle of the night, hey, let's seal off the little seam around the edge. And so I did. And now I'm going to leave this for the rest of the afternoon. I'm not going to mess with it. I'm just going to leave it be. I'm going to let this product set inside the mold. I'm not going to apply any heat. I only applied heat the first time to try and get it to start gelling so it would stop oozing out. It did, and you know, I added a little extra. Not needed this time. This is all that's left over. This is fine. This is a good amount right here. So, with that, I'm just going to leave this to set.